Blog Talk Radio.
Everyone, and welcome to another Friday night's edition of Center Stage. I'm Kheri Hines, your host. Tonight, all eyes are on Ferguson, Missouri, as we await the Mike Brown grand jury decision. If you live in or around Ferguson, such as Hazelwood, Blackjack, Spanish Lake, Berkeley, Cool Valley, Jennings, Bell Ridge, Dellwood, Riverview, or St. Louis, I'd like to hear from you tonight. The world wants to know what your thoughts are as you watch continuous leaks coming from the grand jury. Darren Wilson enjoying paid leave and not being arrested. Bob McCullough's office not responding to the voice of the people. Strip malls being boarded up. The KKK threatening violence against the protesters. The presence of a militarized police. Helicopters flying overhead on a regular basis. Ferguson repeatedly being zoned a no-fly zone. And knowing that there are agitators, double agents, and provocateurs among you. I want to know how all of this psychological warfare is affecting you. If you follow me on Facebook, you know I post about Ferguson on a regular basis. But it was only this week that a friend of mine said, listen, hey, sis, pull back. Because she saw that it was even affecting me, and I'm all the way in Texas. So I can imagine how it must be affecting the people that live in and around Ferguson. So let's talk about it tonight. Get on the phone lines early, hopefully, and call us in at 347-850-8390, and let us hear from you. We want to hear the voices of the people. Are you concerned about your safety at all? Do you have extra supplies in case things get ugly? Do you feel that the police may possibly use deadly force this time? Are you distrustful of the grand jury process? Are you going to adhere to the boycott of your Thanksgiving and Christmas spending? That's what we want to know tonight. So get on the phone lines and let's talk about it. But before we do, let me introduce my co-hosts, Mr. A.J. Houston and Christopher Buns are in the building. Good evening, guys. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Chris? What's up, Kheri? How y'all doing?
Hey, Kheri and A.J., God bless. How you doing?
I'm good.
Doing well, man.
Everybody's watching Ferguson right now, including us. What are you all thoughts as you've seen some of the things I mentioned in the intro? Is it affecting anybody else like it's affecting me? It's like I feel a certain tension about it. It's as though I feel an uneasiness. I feel that maybe things are not going to go right for the protesters. What are you all thoughts?
You know, Kheri, go ahead, A.J.
No, you can go first.
Basically, some of the thoughts and feelings, I'm looking at it twofold in terms of your intro and a lot of the good information and just the what if or the questions that you asked. I mean, I'm not in Ferguson, and I can only imagine the tension and all of the anxiety that is on the table. But I will say this. One or two things is going to happen, that he's going to be indicted or he's not going to be indicted. What I would say is, either way, there has to be a plan A, a plan B, because there's still some things that are going to need to be looked at and proceeded in such a way to address the problems with police brutality, police misconduct, and the behavior of the authorities. So I think, and I'm hoping and praying that people still have a plan, a plan of doing what they're doing in terms of the protest, but then there's some specific plans on the table that groups and organizations will be able to transition right into, because this will be a thing where if he's not indicted, and with the predictions that are being made in terms of possibly agitators and violence and non-peaceful protests, I know that most of the mainstream groups that are there that have been protesting and so forth have been doing things peacefully. But basically my emphasis is that people, as much as possible, don't get so emotionally charged and driven that it doesn't become effective, and then we give the police or the police state or the police militarization authorization to harm, if not kill people.
I agree with that 100%. AJ, what are your thoughts?
Listen, I see how everything has I guess come to this specific point, and it was a purpose that it actually waited to come forth after the election. And I'm still dumbfounded on how so many people could say that they are in an uproar of all the things that's happening in America up to this point, but they didn't want to get out and vote. Not as though their vote didn't matter, or as though they was waiting to see what would happen after this, or maybe they were waiting and they were angry. So you can't. There's a lot of things we can't do with an attitude. You can't have a balanced mind. You can't have balanced actions when you have an attitude, because everything is out of balance. And I think so many things have been out of balance recently that we're looking at Ferguson. We know that everybody in the justice system there was already corrupt. You know, the governor, the police chief, you know, the DA, nobody wanted to step down. Nobody wanted to make him, you know, do what was needed or what was necessary. Mm-hmm. So there are some things that's getting ready to happen, but we could have had a positive effect on the matter, but we just lost our chance on November the 4th, because you already see they're already changing things. And the whole point was to put it off the election so nobody would know that change needed to come. They got to wait another 2 years if they're going to affect change. But by then, so many things will be changed, not to our effect, because when anybody talks about taking America back and they don't give a year or a date and time, there are some times in America, even like now, that America didn't have our best interests at heart.
You know, and to piggyback off of what you just said, you know, in a lot of instances, people do look at the fact that in this election, people of color failed to show up. So therefore, you know, woe unto us for not doing our part. But also, I'd like to say, as far as that economic boycott that they're calling for in Ferguson, woe unto us if we do not adhere. Because I think we got to stop looking at the fact that it doesn't matter if we participate in that or not. Well, in actuality, it does, because some understand there's a divide, whether some of the protesters feel like it's a good thing and then others don't. This is my opinion. I feel like this. If people do not respect you except for in one way, and that's your dollar, then you use that power. And you leverage that power until they respect everything about you. You are not 3/5 of a person. You are a whole person. And they've got to respect everything about you. And so I think withholding the dollar over the Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday sends a message, first of all, that we're unified. And we will move accordingly. Wherever it's necessary, we will come together in unison and we will do things. And I think when we don't adhere to that boycott this Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think we have no other means to leverage our power. Because if we didn't use it at the poll this past midterm election, that's all we got left. And so if your Christmas is all about, you know, the Jordans that you buy, and your Thanksgiving is all about the turkey, then they've already won. You know, so waiting on the decision, if it comes back that he's not going to be indicted, you know, it's business as usual until the next Mike Brown comes along. And this time it may be your child. It may be your grandchild. It may be your nephew. And I think that's what people have got to look at. It's bigger than Mike Brown. It's bigger than one person. It's about all those that have gone before him and all of those that will follow if we don't get up and do something. Would y'all agree with that, or am I off it?
But I completely agree, because I also believe that see, we such a reactionary people, and it's out of habit, out of tradition that we become reactionary. We wait for something to happen, we go pick our picket signs up this Lennon garage from last time we picket, put on our marching shoes from last time we marched, and go and march again. And this is the repetitions that we do until we actually say, okay, if we're going to change something, see, change affects change. And you can't change and make anybody pay attention to you, or anybody try and make rules and just laws for you, if you only are reactionary and you're not trying to be an action type group or an action person, and there's no unity within our community.
I agree. I see Mr. Jerryl Christmas is on the line. Good evening, Mr. Christmas. How are you?
I'm fine, Kheri. How you doing? I was pumping my fist as you were talking, because I agree with you 100%, especially when you talked about the fact that you just don't know who will be next. Because one thing that touched me when I started representing the Myers family, Bondera's mother and father said when Mike Brown was killed, they went out and they marched with the Brown family and they protest, not knowing some weeks later they would be facing the same thing. So you never know when it's going to come to your doorstep. And we have to withhold our dollar to make them understand nationwide, not only in St. Louis and St. Louis County, but nationwide, that Black lives matter.
I agree. And, you know, the thing is, can you give them the dates on that protest so that everybody is clear at the beginning of the show? We're going to reiterate that throughout the show. What are the dates of that boycott?
That boycott is starting Thursday, Thanksgiving, because they're going to open the stores up on Thanksgiving Day. So we want that to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the entire Black Friday weekend. And if you do shop, we want you to only shop with Black businesses. Make it a real Black Friday.
And Kheri, you know that Attorney Christmas said that, and that's the key thing. I think he just said a key thing that maybe Black folks, but people who want to participate in general, don't understand. It's not that you do not shop, but you don't shop at the major retail stores that have that vested interest in our dollars. Now, the Black and the local mom and pop stores do too, but that's where you should shop. And you just basically turn and you don't do any of the mainstream. And I think if people understand that just a little clearer, what the attorney was talking about, then they can maybe wrap their mindset around that, and not that they don't go and buy anything, but it's the where you're shopping and where you should not shop.
Exactly. I think, you know what bothers me, about this when y'all first start posting it online, people start saying, well, Black folks ain't gonna stop shopping. We need to get it in our heads. It is an attack on Black people, period. So if buying a pair of Jordans is more important than us affecting change, then you buy those tennis shoes. But I guarantee you karma will eventually bring this mess to your door until you realize it is about buckling down like never before, like they did in the Montgomery boycott in the 60s, and they decided, listen, whatever we got to do to get change, we going to do it. If we got a carpool, if we got to walk, if we got to thumb or ride, whatever we got to do, we going to do it. And I think that's what we got to realize with this particular situation. Damn it, this is where the bus stops at. How many more Black boys, Black women are going to have to die before we realize we are under attack? Would y'all agree with that? We are under attack.
There's no doubt about it. We're under attack, and the Montgomery bus boycott was 381 days before they yielded to their demands. 381 days, and we're not even 100 days in this. And we have to start somewhere. You're going to always have your naysayers, and they're going to always try to divide our community. But we have to be focused on this for this Thanksgiving weekend, and then we need to push it on through to Christmas. Once we get through the Thanksgiving weekend and everybody understands that it can be done, then we can push it on through to Christmas. It's just like when we started protesting with the Mike Brown situation. Everybody in St. Louis said, it'll be over in 4 or 5 days. And then after it was 10 days, they said it'll be over with in another 2 or 3 days. And then the next thing you know, it was 20 days. Then it was 30 days. Then it was 40 days. And now we're coming up on 100 days. You just have to get it started. Once you get it started, the people will buy in.
Well, the one thing you brought up the Montgomery boycott, and see the thing that people leave out when they talk about that is that, they offered them some concessions that wasn't really what they was asking for, and a lot of people was tired of the picket, tired of not riding the bus, tired of everything else. So they wanted to give in. They were saying, well, we can accept this, and there was this group saying that no, we can't. We have them where we want them. We can't give up. But see, we're so apt to give up as though we got these crumbs from the pop hand and no pie.
Mm. I agree.
And Kheri, I just wanted to say something real quick, because as we were talking about the socioeconomic and that type of landscape, something else I was thinking about, just kind of reeling back to my case, the dollars and what people can do in terms of the boycott, but also to put more teeth and more strength behind movements being pushed forward. This young man, this attorney, Christmas, and I'm saying this out of just the experience that I've had. His family has to also survive, and what I mean by that, a lot of times when some attorneys consider cases that they're taking, they may do it for fee. They may also do it out of contingency. But I think, based on my experience, Attorney Christmas is. I think that also what needs to happen is that people should think about the families that retain good attorneys like him, credible attorneys like him, attorneys that actually have compassion and care, to donate money to individuals' defense funds to offset the family's costs. Most of these families are not wealthy. They don't have a lot of means in a lot of cases, and they're probably pulling from here to there to make it happen. So we should also consider in this movement putting some of my kids. I already know I'm going to get the name of the client that Attorney Christmas is representing and find out if he can, before he leaves, whatever, if they have a legal defense fund set up. My kids, while we're boycotting, I had my kids take a third of the money that they were going to be spending on Black Friday, and we want to take that $100 or $200 and donate it to the Brown family, donate it to the Myers family, to different families that are having these struggles. Because I hope they don't think that these families are made of gold and that they just have a lot of money. But this is just a way that other people can give to help the movement as well.
Mr. Christmas, would you like to respond to that?
I think that's a great idea, but I think he's correct in the sense that these families, the Brown family, the Myers family, the Powell family, and the other families that are victims of this police killing, he's correct. They are not in the best circumstances. They most of them are, working class families that have to survive, and also that are struggling to make ends meet. So I think it's a very a valid point. And that's what the holidays are supposed to be about. We as a people have moved to this commercialism of, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's time that we stop that, and it's time that we break our community of that. I'm a Christian, and Christmas is a holy day. That's what it is. It's a holy day that we celebrate the birth of Jesus. What I told my children when I told them we were boycotting, and I was happy to tell them because I've been looking for an excuse to stop spending. So I was happy to tell them that, we're going to focus on what the real meaning is.
We're going to reel that money in this Christmas.
Right. And I think once people really understand how much they can save, I think this could really catch on, and we could break that whole psychology of what we've been doing, because we tend, as a people, to overspend through the holidays, and we have the least to spend, and we go all out and overboard through the Christmas holidays and are all in debt from January to June.
I agree. And, let me add something, and piggybacking off what Christopher said as well. I see that they're donating things towards the police department because they're, in essence, getting ready to hunker down and expecting, I don't know what they're expecting in the coming days after the announcement is made, but they're hunkering down and they're donating water and food and this, that, and the other. Is anything of that sort being collected for the protesters?
Well, they do have, the protesters are in the process of collecting those things, but the protesters don't get the kind of exposure that the police get. Everything associated with the protesters in the media out here is negative. and everything associated with the police is positive. Just like the governor did that press conference earlier this week. He should have been doubling down on the police instead of trying to double down on the protesters, because it's the police that have been violent. It's the police that killed Mike Brown. It's the police that tear gassed the crowd. It's the police that used rubber bullets. It was not the protesters.
You know, one thing I'd like to say, and y'all excuse me for being somewhat paranoid and very distrustful of taking certain donations because of past experience with our government and how things have been done. They gave blankets to the Indians, and we know what happened with that. So I would just suggest, Joel, I don't know, this is just me, that because of the nature of what's going on, that maybe cash donations would be best unless people know specifically, you know, who is giving the donations and they know them personally. Does that make sense, or am I being overly cautious?
That does make sense. I mean, I think you can never be too cautious. A lot of that is coming through the churches, because we have a number of churches that have volunteered in the St. Louis metropolitan area to be sanctuary places for protesters and for people to go. And so a lot of that can be organized through the Clergy Coalition here or through the United Clergy Alliance.
Okay. Can you repeat that again? So if you want to make a donation, you go through who?
You can go through the Clergy Coalition.
Clergy Coalition. Okay, listen, y'all on the phone lines, if you want to talk about this tonight, I have heard what the governor had to say. I've heard what your mayor has had to say. I've heard from the police chief. I've heard from everybody but the people. And so I'd like to know, how are y'all handling what I call psychological warfare? I mean, when I watched the media coverage and seen the stuff online, I am just stressed out, and I am nowhere near Ferguson. I mean, it is just the tension I feel is building, and I think it's intentional. And I think just the stalling of making the announcement, I think all of the leaks that, you know, I call them alleged leaks, because I don't believe there's a such thing as a leak. I think it's really something they want you to know, and some information that they want to mislead you by. So with all of that that's going on between, you know, the leaks and, you know, the grand jury saying, well, we didn't leak it, and, you know, Mr. McCullough's office responding, and everybody's responding but the people. And this is what I see. I see mainstream media, you know, talking about Ferguson, but I see a shift. I don't know if anybody else noticed. I thought initially, I felt like the press, the mainstream press that is, was on the side of the people. But now I kind of sense that there's a shift, and the coverage seems to be leaning more toward Darren Wilson. Does anybody else see that besides me? Like, he's probably not going to be indicted, and so, you know, the protesters, they're violent. And has anybody seen that type of shift with the coverage for the mainstream media besides me?
Well, it started off like that, but it's really been revved up, because in the court of public opinion, I'm saying, to me it's almost like the NFL with the Adrian Peterson deal, you know, and him whipping his son. When the public got involved, everything became crucial, and it was because of the way they put it out, the pictures, and the same thing here. When they start making everybody else look good and the protesters look bad, everybody started looking at the protesters as bad, because a lot of people don't investigate for the truth. They just listen to the surface information. That's what they accept. They heard it on the news outlet, so it has to be the truth. So that's what they accept.
And so when you're hearing things like the Ku Klux Klan are saying that they're going to fatally wound protesters, you know, I'm sorry, that is not by mistake that MSN would run something like that. I mean, you got to pay attention. This is going to be physical, in my opinion. It's going to be spiritual, and it's going to be psychological warfare being thrown at the protesters. And in my opinion, you got to take all that into consideration. And so if you are basically absorbing all of this like a sponge, it's got to be affecting you. And so why would MSNBC run a story about the Ku Klux Klan saying they're going to fatally wound somebody? Since when did the Ku Klux Klan become the police with no uniforms on. I mean, we know that probably there are Klansmen among the police department, but the one that was on MSNBC the other night was not a police officer, and he was openly saying we're going to kill people if they threaten, members of the community. Jerryl, is that illegal? I mean, Jerryl, is that illegal?
I think it's illegal to be making threats on national TV. And the other thing that we need to be clear about is that the protesters, to my knowledge, since this began, have not been threatening people in the community, nor have they been threatening people's individual homes. You know, these people are buying guns. Gun sales are going out the roof in the St. Louis metropolitan area. And we want to be clear that the protesters have not been breaking in people's houses or attacking individuals. They've been out there protesting against what happened to Mike Brown, and for the most part, the protesters have been peaceful, aside from the looting that occurred with the going in the stores and the taking of stuff. But that, in and of itself, I'm not extremely disturbed by that, because you have to remember 50 years ago when we were just asking for basic human rights, they were blowing up our churches, killing our children, hanging us, water hosing us, sicking dogs on us, and then you had the nerve to get upset about somebody breaking a window, stealing some hair and some rims. That doesn't even compare with what happened to us as a people when all we were asking for is basic human rights. And we need to be clear that because you're always going to have some nuts out there that you can't control, but if people start to loot again, there's no reason to use lethal force because somebody broke a window or somebody took a rim. You can't use lethal force against them, or they taking some beauty supply products. You can go in there and you can arrest them, but that doesn't give you grounds to use lethal force, and we need to be clear about that as far as the rules of engagement. But I'm concerned because I believe, as you say, they are hyping this situation up because they want something to happen, because that's going to cause people to watch these programs. That's going to cause newspapers to sell. They are intentionally making this self-fulfilling prophecy that, the apocalypse is getting ready to happen here. And that's the thing that concerns me, that we all have to be mindful of and we have to push back on, that somebody needs to be doubling down on the police not to be violent, because we know from the protest situation this summer in August, it's the police's presence that escalates things. The way that they come out and the way that they approach with the riot gear, with the tanks, with the assault weapons pointing at the protesters, they can easily escalate a situation.
But we know that there's agitators, provocateurs, and double agents out there in Ferguson, though. We know that, right?
We know that. And we just have to be mindful, and everybody is going to have to keep their head about themselves while they're out there. But the people have a constitutional right to protest. Depending on what the decision is, that is their right to go out there. So you can't tell them that they can't go out and vent their anger. That's why we live in America. It's a free country, and we have a constitutional right to go out there, and they should be able to exercise their constitutional rights and be protected by the police as they exercise their constitutional rights.
Well, Joe, let me ask you something. One thing that I noticed, last time that, became a big story was that the officers were not wearing name badges and they were not properly uniformed. Was that even legal?
It was legal. They said that because of their training and the name tags having sharp edges or points or being pinned on, that they had been trained initially to remove anything from their body that was sharp that could cause injury. But this time around, they have indicated that everyone is going to have name tags on where they can be identified by their name and their DSN number. So that issue allegedly has been addressed, and that they will have it on. A lot of this we won't actually know until we actually get out there and see.
You mentioned a second ago about the rules of engagement, and I saw some of them online. Can you go over, the fact that there are, I understand there's supposed to be 19 rules of engagement?
Well, the Hands Up Coalition, they came up with 19 rules of engagement that they've been negotiating with the police department on. I don't have all 19 of them in front of me right now, but they have made some progress on it. But, right now it's just dialogue back and forth. It's good because, they set up some contact points and some contact people. They set up ways that they can reach the chief of police in both the city and in the county if need be, and they've asked people to serve. I'm one of the people that will be serving as a liaison out there between the protesters and the police. So, the dialogue has helped to put some mechanisms in place, and my hope is that these mechanisms will help and prevent any possible loss of life out there. But, we in St. Louis, and let me be clear to everybody listening, we're all in uncharted water, the way this is going on. We have never had a movement of this magnitude here, and we've never been faced with this situation before. So all of this is new, and it's very fluid, and we're really going to have to see, what happens when the decision actually comes down. The whole way that this is going on, I think this is going to be a case study on how not to do something, because this is not the way that this should have happened. This whole anxiety period, the whole city is under anxiety. I thought that it was just me because, I'm an attorney and I'm so close to it. But I talk to so many people, so many lay people in various occupations, and they say, "No, man, we all worried about this." I mean, we have a whole city unnecessarily under anxiety. I really feel like if anything happens, you all have to hold the elected officials here accountable, the governor, the county executive, the prosecutor, because Bob McCullough could just say, November 20th, I'm going to announce the decision. We day to day. We don't know, is it going to be today? Is it going to be Sunday? Is it going to be Monday? I don't know what effect all this extra unnecessary anxiety is going to have on the people and how that's going to make people react. Not to mention, you have to think about all the extra anxiety that this also puts on law enforcement, even good law enforcement, because they've been stressed to the max since this happened. So people really have short fuses. And this extra anxiety that they have the entire city under is not helping the situation at all.
I have some of the rules of engagement. I don't have all of them, but maybe you can help me tell me whether or not these have been resolved or not. I understand that they're asking the police to provide information that makes clear a law enforcement's chain of command, basically who's making what decisions and when.
They've done that. That's been resolved.
Okay. There was something else about assurances that neither police nor the government will interfere with the flow of information. Basically, they're referring to no wiretapping and attempts to interfere with Internet and cellular access. Has that been resolved?
That has not been resolved.
Wow. I understand that they're asking the police not to use rubber bullets, armored vehicles, rifles, and tear gas.
That's not been resolved.
Wow. I don't think that one will be, y'all. I'm just saying. I understand all
the police have indicated that they will do what's necessary to protect their safety and the public's, depending on the situation.
But I thought, let's just say everything but the tear gas. Isn't tear gas illegal to begin with?
I'm not clear on that. People have made those statements, but I'm not clear on that. I haven't seen anything that says the tear gas is illegal.
Gotcha. Okay, and then I understand that they're asking that officers not wear riot gear, but be more minimally attired for
They're
their
not
safety.
going to do that. They're not going to do that. They've clearly said that they have to protect the officers, and they're going to wear what they need to wear to protect the officers.
Okay. And also understand that the school system down there has repeatedly asked that they get some type of notice about when the announcement is going to happen so that they can protect the 20,000 students that y'all have down there getting to and from school and not get caught up in the crossfire.
They announced today that the schools will get 3 hours notice before the media.
Wow. So if you're,
but really,
wow.
Once the schools get 3 hours notice, everybody gonna know. Because once the schools know, that's everybody. Because then all the parents gonna know, which means everybody gonna know at that point. And all the school districts have been updating their emergency response systems to make sure that they're able to get notices out to parents in case of emergency or in case of school closing. One thing that I would like for you all to emphasize when you mention Ferguson. Ferguson is just one of 91 municipalities in St. Louis County. See, they're trying to distance Ferguson to make people around the country think Ferguson is this town, 50 miles away from St. Louis that's sitting by itself. But Ferguson is part of the St. Louis metropolitan area. They don't want to put that bad mark on the St. Louis metropolitan area, but you need to be clear when you're talking to people that this is all St. Louis. My friends from D.C. will call and say, well, you back in St. Louis or you still in Ferguson? I'm like, St. Louis is a mile from Ferguson. It's all the metropolitan area of these 91 municipalities. And Mike Brown happened in Ferguson, but it could have easily happened in many of the other municipalities that we have in this area. That's one of the problems, the system that we have here. But be sure to indicate that this is, St. Louis, Ferguson, Missouri.
And I did that in my intro, talking about I was really talking to all of the areas. I didn't mention all 90-something, but I mentioned quite a few that were surrounding Ferguson and St. Louis. Another thing that really kind of took my anxiety to another level the other night was when they hit the grid and alleged that it was a car accident that hit a pole that caused, 20-some hundred households to lose electricity. Were you all at all concerned about that?
We were, but I think sometimes they're testing things out to see what the reaction is going to be and how they can control the situation. I think one of the reasons why they may be pushing for something to happen here to use St. Louis as a test case for how long will it actually take us to take over a city in this modern era of protesting and the way that this is happening, because they're not accustomed to movements happening the way that this one is happening. They used to coming in and talking to the NAACP or certain church organizations and just getting this thing squashed. But it's not happening the normal way here. And so they're really studying this situation, trying to figure out, how do you handle situations like this in the future and what do you do? So I think they're testing a lot of different options. We have military helicopters flying over. It's all kind of stuff going on, but I think we really are being a guinea pig, as a study to see, just how do you deal with a city that may erupt in the future behind these issues, especially with the invention of social media and blog talk radio and all these other things.
Are y'all at all concerned about that Ebola testing facility up there now? Do you think they may use that as a biological weapon if things really get crazy?
Well, I think we have to be concerned about everything, Kheri. You don't want to, become overly paranoid, but you have to be aware of everything going on. I personally, Ebola, on the continent of Africa is part of chemical warfare that probably got out of hand and got out of control over there. So I'm always suspicious of those types of viruses and things of that nature that are going on. So you just have to be aware of everything that's happening and aware of your surroundings. And that's what we've been telling the people here, telling the young people. This is the time where you really need to be paying attention to what's going on around you, what's going on in your surroundings, to try to keep your head clear. I tell them this is not the time to be riding around smoking some blunts in your car. you need to be paying attention to what's going on and trying to keep yourself focused and trying to keep yourself healthy and alert, because we really don't know what's going to happen, and you want to try to be your sharpest so that you can deal with it.
I agree. When I look at Ferguson, and I'm not there, and I've never even been involved in the protest, y'all, so I really, this would be like uncharted waters for me, too, if I were there. But
well, you need to come. You need to get on the plane and get here.
I am so thinking about it. But for people that are coming into St. Louis and Ferguson to be a part of this, how do they know where to meet up, what to do, what not to do? Is there some type, and I'm not saying put the blueprint out here, but how do they know where to go and where to meet up?
That's a good question. And there is no one go-to person. There are, a number of organizations out here that are working in different coalitions. I think, if you get into the city and you just start asking around, you'll get directed to people. They can always contact me at 314-652-2200. That's 314-652-2200, and I can plug them in. But, if you get in town, you head to the Ferguson Police Department, you'll see some people, and they'll start directing you.
Somebody's out there protesting.
That or, another place, if you're in Ferguson and you go to St. Mark Church, there's always, that's a sanctuary, and there's always some people there, and the pastor always knows how to connect you with people. So, this is such a big issue here. If you get in the city, it won't take you long to connect with some people to figure out what's going on.
But the problem is, as we said in the intro, there's agitators, provocateurs, and double agents. And so, for a greenhorn like me, and, and there's probably a couple more greenhorns going to be in the group, how do they know, who's a double agent, who's a provocateur, who's an agitator? Have y'all got any training on how people can know? Because this could be life or death, depending upon how they handle this. How does somebody know how to stay out of the company of that type of person?
That's a good question, and I can't answer. They have been doing training, but I have not been involved on the ground with some of that training. I probably would have to give you some numbers offline of people that you can probably contact that can give you better information on that.
Okay, because, and I'm being very honest in that, listen, I believe in erring on the side of caution all the time. If I get a bad vibe about you, I think somebody put it online just the other day, they said energy don't lie. So I would say to anybody out there that's a greenhorn and you just joining the movement, if the person standing next to you does not feel right, move away.
Right.
You agree?
I agree.
Energy don't lie. And when I saw that online, I thought that is so true. And if you second guess yourself and say, well, they're dressed right, or they don't look like they're going to pose a threat, you are putting yourself in danger. I think I would just immediately just move away. I wouldn't even second guess myself on any of that, because what I keep seeing, and maybe this is overinflated, but they kind of give me the impression it's like these people are fit to go in for the kill. When I'm looking at this weaponry that they've got, and I'm listening to the language of the governor and the mayor and the DA's office, I'm not getting warm and fuzzy about this. And I'm just wondering, is anybody else worried besides me that this may not go right?
Everybody's worried, Kheri. You're not the only one. The vibe that you feeling is that's the vibe that the other 2 million people in this city are feeling also. Everybody's feeling that same way. Everybody's talking about this. Everybody is nervous about how this thing is going to go down. We know that the whole country is watching us, but everybody in the metropolitan area is on edge. There's nobody that you come in contact with Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Native American that is not talking about this situation here. So stay tuned. Just stay tuned, stay focused, keep talking about it, because we need outside people that are talking about the situation here and raising the issues that you're raising. I really appreciate what you're doing, the time that you're taking on your show to discuss what's happening in St. Louis and the problems that we're having here, because believe me, it really is making a difference. You may not believe it and you may not feel it, but it really is making a difference. The fact that yourself and other people that are on the show with you tonight are out there talking about this and keeping this an issue nationwide, because that's what's going to make the difference. And also, that's what's going to be the pivotal point in making sure that these people stay safe. The issues that you raise about, you know, how the police are reacting and how the governor and the mayor are talking. Keep talking about that. Keep putting it on social media and keep putting it out there and keep pushing them and putting a hammer on them and asking people to boycott nationally about this, because where we can really hurt them is with our dollar, and we have to show them that we're willing to keep that dollar in our pocket. Okay? I have to go, but stay strong and stay with us in this struggle. And give me a call later, and I'll try to put some of those numbers together for some other people that you can talk to that can answer some of those questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Jerryl. And the number to reach you at, again, if they want you, 652-2200?
Area code 314.
Area code 314. Thank you, Jerryl. Jerryl only had a little time to spend with us tonight, and we appreciate all that information you gave us tonight. Listen, y'all, it's that simple. I mean, it is really that simple. It's a lot going on, and Jerryl is an excellent contact if you get on the ground in Ferguson and don't know what to do or who to trust. And he also says St. Mark Church is another great place to find out what's going on. But listen, Ferguson, I'm talking to y'all, but y'all not talking to me tonight. Get on the phone lines. I did this show because I'm an outsider. I didn't feel like I had as much to lose as some of y'all would have to lose, maybe, if you were speaking out as I am tonight. But I want to hear, what are y'all thinking? What are y'all feeling? My phone lines are jammed, but y'all are not pressing one to talk to me and tell me what it feels like to live in Ferguson right now, what it feels like to live in the St. Louis area under this militarized police presence, listening to your mayor and your governor. Basically, if they were my mayor and my governor, I would be very concerned and wanting to know, really, did they have my best interest at heart if I was a protester? Because it just seems to me that what I'm seeing from them is as though, and like I said earlier, the mainstream media has split. You know, at first they were out there and they were talking about, you know, the protester was under attack and the police are, you know, attacking innocent protesters. But I don't know if it's me, AJ, and Christopher, but I'm hearing a shift. I don't know. I think it was AJ said he felt it all the time, but I thought at first when I saw some of the coverage, I thought the media was saying, you know, the poor protester. Now I think I'm hearing the protesters are dangerous and the protesters might do this and the protesters might do that. You know, I'm hearing that tone now. Are y'all hearing that?
You know, Kheri, I'm hearing that shift, I mean, equally, and I'm authenticating what you're saying. But you have to keep something in mind. The undertone or undercurrent of things like imperialism, fascism, they're dependent. I think there's some background.
There's background. Is that your noise?
Okay, there it's going.
Okay.
But imperialism and fascism is dependent on public opinion, and the way that public opinion, in a lot of cases, has the pendulum swings the way to the people is shows like yours. Basically, keeping that wound open, not allowing it to heal, so that then as long as they can get a percentage of the people in their pocket in terms of this is what's on the mainstream media, and this is what we're going to do to protect the police and so forth. they said nothing about protecting the public. So that goes back to really, unfortunately, what police do in general. And it is not necessarily, I didn't say they don't, but it is not necessarily established to protect the people and the rights of the people. And so it's swinging because they're trying to pull it back in their court so that when and if, and I think it's going to be more of a when, not an if, there for any kink so that they can use tear gas and kill people. Because the bottom line, all done and said, just like with any of these other cases with a cell phone or a ham sandwich that they said they thought was a gun and they shot first before they asked. As long as they can get the public opinion to think, oh, well, that cop, he probably thought it was. Mentality-wise, they will win. And the other thing I wanted to say is that if you do consider going to Ferguson, let me know when a tentative time might be. I'm only 4 hours away. I can plot that on my calendar, and I can have your back so you won't be there among individuals that way to go or the other, and we'll do it together. So if that's possible,
we might have to do that, Christopher. AJ, you on board? AJ Houston. AJ said, "Listen, I didn't sign up for that." Okay, Christopher.
but you know what?
No. That's hold up. No, that's okay. What I'm saying. See, I am actually driving, so I muted my phone, and I was trying to pick my phone up and unmute it. But when are you going? I'm saying it matters. It matters when you're going. And
well, we ain't gonna announce it on the air, but listen, Ferguson, we might just show up for the protest. But we ain't gonna announce it on the air. But we might get together, y'all, off the air. We gotta go to these phone calls, y'all. Area code 901-299. Good evening. You're on center stage.
Hey, Sister Kheri, how you doing? Brother Bonds and Brother AJ, this is Ron Hurd.
Fine, Ron. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I was just listening, really enjoying the show. A lot of great information, a lot of great insight that's not getting out there in the white stream media, but it's very important, like the brother said, that you talk about these topics and get it out there to the people because they really need to hear it.
I agree. And your show, Ron has a show here on Blog Talk Radio, We All Be Radio, and you've been putting a lot of information out on Ferguson, and you've actually been to Ferguson several times since Mike Brown's death. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I've been several times. Actually, I'm participating in an art show called Hands Up, Don't Shoot exhibit. We got like 18 to 20 locations throughout the St. Louis, Ferguson area where we have been exhibiting art. So it's been like a nationwide call for artists to express their outrage and anger and frustration at the situation. So, we've had over 100 artists participate from L.A. to New York, especially a lot of artists from St. Louis and Kansas City have contributed to the show. And I heard it's doing pretty well. And I heard also that you will go back to Ferguson. Oh, you going to Ferguson. And I will be up there probably in December sometime just to pick up my artwork, and who knows. But my thing is this. Okay, I'm sorry.
We may all need to coordinate our trip up there.
You know what? I think we can talk offline, like you're saying, and coordinate sometime that would be convenient for. I'm flexible. So between you three, you come up with a date, and I'll be there.
We're going to have to do this. We're going to have to do this because, you know what? Y'all, Center Stage has covered Ferguson. I mean, wow. I mean, I probably covered as much as anybody else. And I'll be honest with you, I really would like to see, the situation for myself close up and just see, because, Ron, you've been there and you've actually, are very familiar with the St. Louis area. What is your vibe when you go up there, being someone who doesn't live in the area but is familiar with St. Louis? Do you feel the tension that we mentioned earlier with all of this that's going on?
It is definitely tension. It's a frustration, and you got to think about just the history of that part of the country, the Midwest, in particular Missouri area, or Missouri as I call it. You look back, some of the worst guerrilla warfare fighting was done in Missouri. And you think about John Brown, his campaigns in Bleeding Kansas, a lot of his enemies were from Missouri. So Missouri has always been a Confederate stronghold, like stronghold for white supremacy in particular. It's been a very tough area to crack in terms of white supremacy. You got the Citizen Council's headquarters is in St. Louis. and you got some Klan outfits in the Ozarks in Missouri. So, I mean, it's always been a strong nut to crack, as they say. And the people are frustrated, but black folks got to understand this. We are being played on a string, like we're puppets, and they're the puppet masters. And it will be something to embrace the element of surprise. Let's say they do come out with the indictment decision or whatever, and nobody protested. Nobody shows up. They'll be making a powerful and a very damning statement, because you cannot get justice in the system as black people, and black folks are getting sick from racism and white supremacy. You cannot win playing somebody else's rules, playing by the rules in their game. You got to create your own game. You got to create your own rules of engagement. You got to have a better understanding on that, because we don't understand the strategies of what warfare is. Warfare is not just bullets and guns and gas masks and chemical, but also it's psychological and spiritual and intellectual and all those things. So we got to really grasp those concepts right now, because we are at war, and we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves.
I agree. Hold on, Ron. We want you to stay with us tonight. Listen, if you just tuned in, you come to the station tonight. We want to hear from Ferguson. If you live in Hazelwood, Blackjack, Spanish Lake, Berkeley, Cool Valley, Jennings, Bell Ridge, Delwood, Riverview, St. Louis, or any of the other surrounding areas, we want to hear from you. Do you feel the tension of this psychological warfare and spiritual warfare that's going on up there in St. Louis? We want to know how you feel about all these leaks that are coming out of the grand jury. The fact that Darren Wilson has had an extended vacation, in essence, paid for, and the fact that he's not arrested. You know, how do you feel about the fact that Bob McCullough is just basically ignoring the voice of the people? How do you feel about walking down the street and seeing all the strip malls just basically being boarded up as though they're waiting for, you know, the second coming of Christ or something much worse? We just want to hear what you think when you hear the Ku Klux Klan saying that they're going to use lethal force against protesters. We're going to go back to the phone lines. We're going to pick up area code 770-807. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you? Pleased to join your discussion tonight.
Oh, fine. How are you?
Okay. I'd like to respond to a couple of your questions you just asked just a moment ago, but I'd particularly like to ask you about a comment you made a little bit earlier, in which you said we're all hoping that this turns out right. What exactly did you mean by right? What is the correct way for this to turn out?
I think the people feel that Officer Darren Wilson needs to be arrested and indicted. I think that's turning out right.
Okay, well, that's what the grand jury is convening to do, to determine whether or not he should be indicted. What if they don't return a true bill of indictment? Then what should happen?
Well, then I think there should be an economic boycott of Christmas spending and Thanksgiving spending.
Okay, well, that's a reasoned response, because, you're free to spend your money where you will. But I would submit to you that, the grand jury is convened to determine, as the Fifth Amendment says, no person shall be convicted or charged with capital crime unless on presentment of a grand jury. And the grand jury is there to determine whether or not charges should be placed against Officer Wilson. And, look, I don't know what the facts are in this case, because I haven't seen what the grand jury proceedings are supposed to be secret. All we know, there's been leaks, and I think we know why there's been leaks. I mean, I'm sure I could certainly speculate as to why there have been. The only facts of which I am certain of, and the facts of which I am fairly certain of, at least being presented as fact, are the two autopsy reports from Michael Baden, the medical examiner hired by the family, and the St. Louis County medical examiner, both of which I have read, and it would seem, based upon those reports, and if I take in conjunction the leaked information from the grand jury, of which I am admitting I do not know is true, because they're leaks and they are not verified, but if they are so, in conjunction with the autopsy report, there is no reason to indict Officer Wilson of any crime.
Okay. I'm not going to be baited into that. I'm not going to be baited into that.
That's my opinion. I'm not trying to bait anyone.
I think you are
I'm not
being
trying to bait anyone.
I think you are being called you are being what they call a provocateur. Because, and I'm not going to be baited into that one, because I think if anybody has listened and paid attention to the news coverage, you know that there's something wrong with that shooting. And if you don't,
no, I don't.
If you then that, you know what I would say to
Kheri.
you know what? Go ahead.
Kheri, here's the bottom line. For anyone, and they have their right to their opinion. I agree with you. That's what I went. That's why I've been in the military 25 years to protect the freedoms and liberties of every man and woman in the United States, irregardless of their opinion. But here's the thing. Also say that would also be to infer that the disproportionate of a white defendant versus a black defendant is fair force. So let's, again, not sit here and surmise that criminal justice system, even when it comes down to the grand jury, which is an arm of the state's attorney's office, is going to be fair. So you're with the assumption that you may have, or maybe you have a belief or fact or foundation to believe that it's fair. I do not. And from personal experience, I do not. And I do know that Officer Deering was a black cop in the same situation that had shot a white male. It would have been no question. It would have been undeniable. He would have been arrested and charged already. So with that being said, you can have your parlay in terms of your opinion and you're free to it, but it's disproportionate and the system is not fair.
Well, I've collected 284 megabytes of data on this case, opinions from people, protesters' opinions, protesters' sayings, everything I can get on this case. 284 megabytes. I've read every single word. Every single word. I think I have a basis from which to form an opinion. I have formed an opinion based upon that extensive database of knowledge from innumerable sources. And I still haven't made up my mind absolutely yet, despite that, because, as I said, none of the evidence coming out has been absolutely verified to be false. I certainly haven't seen what the grand jury has seen, so I can't. So I have seen, however, what many people are threatening to do, to include lawmakers. I'm talking about elected officials, either implying threats, flat out making threats, and other leaders identified by name in the Ferguson community, which frankly are really disturbing given the fact that they're supposed to be in responsible positions. Now look, like I said, anybody's free to have their opinion, and that's fine. I'm not going to tell anybody how to think, but I am absolutely convinced.
You got some noise in your background that's very...
Jerry, I am next. I am next, Kheri, so let's talk.
Okay. You said what, AJ?
AJ was saying he was next. He wants to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead, AJ. I'm listening. Where did AJ go? Okay, we're going to pick up the next call, and then we'll go back to AJ. Area code 770-879. Good evening. You're on Thursday.
Well, thank you very much, Kheri. This is Mary Neal. What an interesting discussion we're having. I want you to know that we have the expectation, and when I say we, I mean African Americans, of having $1.1 trillion in expendable income by 2016. That will be African Americans' expendable income by 2016. That amounts to $1,000 billion, over $1,000 billion. And so, as you know, generally speaking, African Americans spend most of that, if not, practically all of that, is usually spent as it comes in. So the best way to handle these injustices that continually assail us is not by marching and singing. I think that marching and singing are useful to generate press and also to notify individuals in your community, in your greater community, including the whole nation and the world, about what happened and what you feel about what happened. But we've already done that. I think the Ferguson protesters, and not just the ones in Ferguson, because we had Ferguson protests down here in Atlanta. So the Ferguson protesters all over America and even in some foreign countries have done an excellent job as far as publicizing this evil that was done and how we feel about it. Oh, there's COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO, stop your shit. They're messing with my phone. You know, I got a landline, and they took it over in about 2 days. But anyway, the situation is that we have $1.1 trillion to spend, and we do usually spend it. And it's time that African Americans and all oppressed people realize that we must boycott for justice. We don't have drone planes. We don't have crowd tasers. We don't have thousands and thousands of rounds of hollow point bullets, helicopters from the Army, or any of that we would need to launch a military exercise. But we do have our money. And we know that America is owned by corporations, and in fact this country is except a corporation. So we have to deal with this from a monetary standpoint, and I started writing Boycott for Justice a number of years ago. As a matter of fact, I have some videos on YouTube that are named exactly that, Boycott for Justice. And I'm so glad that it's being done, and I highly recommend it, and I think it would be highly effective. You know, that man Ben Jealous attacked me physically to keep me from reaching Troy Davis's sister to let her know that if she wanted to save her brother's life, it was time out for saying he's innocent, he's innocent, and he's innocent. It's time to tell people that I need you to agree with me that if they kill him with no better evidence than this, we will boycott nationwide and even worldwide American products. And so Ben Jealous actually almost knocked me down. He pushed me so hard I almost fell on the ground because he did not want me to let her know how she could best use her few moments in front of the cameras of the world when doing the last rally in Atlanta to save Troy Davis. Boycotting works. It's the only real weapon that we have is our money, and it is very upsetting to oppressors because they love money like many of us love God, like many of us love our brothers and sisters. And so they love money just that much. And so if you really want to make a lasting impression and you really want to effect positive change, you simply cannot do that unless you make an economic protest. So I'm very proud of those groups in Ferguson that have come together on the rallying cry of boycott for justice. They're saying no justice, no profits. Hallelujah. So I'm so glad because that way everybody can participate in the protest against Micah Brown's murder and all of the other murders of black and brown people. Even the timid and even the elderly, nobody can arrest you or taser you or send smoke bombs at you for staying home. You can do that and stay home, and I recommend that everybody would consider staying home throughout this holiday season. Keep your money in your pocket and don't do any protests immediately after that verdict is read because that's what they're expecting, and the hurt will be on you. Just stay home, and put the hurt on them on Black Friday and all the way to Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. We're going to go to area code 314-853. Good evening. You're on center stage.
Good evening to you, too. My question, but the lady just got out, what about the people the black people that's working these jobs? If you don't you think you're going to hurt them, too?
Oh, yeah. Let me jump in on that. First of all, everybody got to sacrifice something. And, the thing is, how many more Mike Browns do you want to happen before you realize you got to change something? If you want change, you got to do something, because what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting change. How many have come before Mike Brown, and how many will go after him if nothing happens? I can predict many, many more.
Now, we've been going through this stuff ever since I can remember, and I'm close to 70 years old. That's all I have seen was protesting. When have you known black folks to win anything? And then you got your politicians, you got your ministers. Do you know how many people capitalize off the tragedy of certain things that happen? And I'm surprised. Huh?
Can I say something? I call you old school because you call in on a regular basis, and old school. This is what I'm going to say about you. You do not realize the power of life and death is in your tongue, and you speak so much negativity into black people doing anything. And don't get me wrong, I am frustrated myself about what black people have done in the past. But I do know that we have the ability to do better. And I think we need to start speaking positively about what we're going to do going forward. Do you agree with that?
No. I want you to tell me where I'm talking negative at. What did I say that was so negative?
This is what I mean. Okay, somebody's got noise in their background.
Kheri, that's me. I'm driving. But I'm saying maybe I could clear it up for him. Because to me, you sound exactly like the white guy that's on the phone. He's just in the opposite negative direction. And I'm saying it's cool for everybody to have their opinion, but I'm saying historical data shows that there has been major changes, but the changes only occurred when we stuck together as a unit and did something. And you say it can't be done, but we can't say can't anymore because it's too late. It's too late for us to just stop doing what we're doing and stop trying to make a forward motion. No, let me finish. It's too late for us to stop trying to make a forward motion. And just like the lady said, I think that protests should pursue while the trial is going on after the trial because it would stop any further hindrance of police being, advocated from the justice system.
Well, I tell you, when you look at the first thing I look at the untreated trauma of black people. Black people are really traumatized. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
And now that if you look at the young people that's coming up, and I see this every day, pregnancy, they're not taking care of their children. And the only weapon that black people have is knowledge. And we don't have the knowledge to fight these people with.
Yes,
you got to have
you fight them. James Brown said a long time ago, you use what you got to get just what you want. We got money, baby, and we spend more money than anybody else.
And what do we spend that money for?
We need to take this money and keep it in our pockets, and we need to close some of these damn businesses down. We need to show these people that we are the gravy train. And when they got through using us for slaves, they started enslaving our people in prisons. And we do have changes done. You don't ride on the back of the bus unless you want to. And that was accomplished through boycott. Yes, they marched and sang to get public attention because that was necessary to communicate the struggle. But the real struggle was won by boycotting. In my town, they boycotted. I'm from the city of Summerville, Tennessee, a little town, tit city, baby, where the people walked out and they left those farms because the landowners put them off of their farms, and they had to go live in dirty tents. For years they lived in those dirty tents. Yes, I'm talking about sacrifice, but you will get nothing until you realize that sacrifices must be made to win the battle. And this is a battle that must be won because these black boys have a right to walk down the street. They have a right to breathe God's air, and they have a right to do that without fear of being stopped and searched. They have a right to do that without fear of being shot down like a rabid dog. And I say to you that sacrifices must be made, and our protesters have already made the sacrifices that have made this struggle public knowledge throughout the world. And Michael Brown's family even went to the United Nations, and other groups even went to the United Nations. We have the attention of the world. Further street protests are not necessary now. What we need to do now is hit them with our might. And our might, baby, is the almighty dollar. And don't tell me that ain't important to these oppressors, because that's the only thing that ever was. Thank you very much. This is Mary Neal. I wrote an article online. It's called Wilson Acquitted, Boycott for Justice. Thank you very much. God bless you. I tell you, I get upset listening to this man and the other man who spoke earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and go.
I don't care. I don't give a damn about you.
I don't give a damn about you, old-ass Uncle Tom dog.
I don't give a damn about you getting upset. And that just goes to show you that you don't have any knowledge of what's going on your damn self.
Now, why would you address a lady like that, caller? Now, I'm sorry.
Well, she's sitting there criticizing me, and you know yourself. You know yourself. You can't do nothing when you're ignorant. You have to have some knowledge.
But check it out. We're on a radio show, and we're actually trying to conduct this conversation. I guess at least the level of, comprehension. You're talking about knowledge and you're talking about understanding. I'm saying you can address a lady like a lady and still not, because regardless of if you don't agree with her, we're on a radio show where it's a whole lot of people so far that hadn't agreed with anybody.
Well,
so let's keep it that. No, let's keep it that way and keep it manageable, because there's no reason for you to cuss anybody out on this line.
Well, I didn't cuss anybody. I just say, damn. No. That's in the Bible.
Well, she called him Uncle Tom dog.
Yeah, but you know what? I see that sometimes.
And you didn't say anything about her saying anything. I mean, all of this talking, when you get through talking about what you're talking about, you still need some wisdom and knowledge. You cannot fight a war without weapons. Our weapon is knowledge, and we need it. We have fathers running off, leaving their children. Every day I go out, I see some young girl pregnant, trying to take care of herself. No, man. How you going to win in a war like that? I want you to tell me that.
No, hold on. We can actually, within ourselves, we can do like the news media and just talk about the bad things that's going on. But see, where I'm from, I see a lot of men that are single fathers taking care of their children. So I'm saying there's a balance here. Now there's a balance here that nobody's bringing up. I'm saying we can't stop anything from going on, but we got to be an example of what can happen and what can go good. And that's where you change things.
And she talking about the money. All the money that we spend, when black folks spend money, they spend it for food. They spend it to try to survive in it. We don't have no money to put together to do anything. And if we did put money together, you got a force out there that's not going to allow it.
Sir, let me say something, O'Donnell. Let me say something. When the battle starts, I want you to get on the other side. I don't want you nowhere near me with that kind of negativity in my ear. I want you to get as far from me as the East is from the West. Because it's going to be people like that in the movement that's going to keep the movement from moving forward.
And it's people like you. It's people like you talking about raising money to send to Africa for this Ebola. Was that what you was talking about?
We ain't talking about Ebola tonight. We talking about Ferguson tonight.
Kheri, I hear what you're talking about, but all of this stuff go together. And I live right 5 minutes away from Ferguson.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to make this last comment. I'm going to let you respond, and I'm going to move on to 814. Caller, the thing is I've learned either you are part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Ferguson is too crucial for us to be divided. It's going to take total unity. And I say to anybody who doesn't have something positive and some words of wisdom to move this movement forward, get quiet and pray. If that's all you can do, then do that. But don't hold nobody back. Don't do that.
I'm not trying to hold anybody. I'm not trying to hold anybody back. But when you sit there and talk about praying ain't help nothing. Can you tell me what praying is help? Black people have been praying for 400-500 years.
Kheri, here's the bottom line. Individuals need to realize, just out of respect, if you want to have a full-fledged platform, you should get your own show. Out of respect.
How you going to tell somebody to get their own show?
Sir, listen to what I'm saying. First of all,
is this the major?
What you should do? Yes, this is, sir. So what you
I talked to you last week when I told you when you called the police on your auntie that your auntie could have been killed.
Sir, you are.
And I think that I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna get out here too.
Sir, please.
But
here's your problem. Your problem is that
we all have a problem.
Instead of calling in and making your comment and letting your comment lie, you want to come in and be a panelist or overtake the show. We're not going to allow that. You want to make a comment, and you want to get your own show, you want to put your own platform issues on the table, then you can do that. You can say to you, blue in the face, oh, you shouldn't have done this about your aunt, you shouldn't have done that. You are one that wouldn't take care of an individual that was elderly and that would need the care. So if you don't have another comment relative to the person, it's time for you to go. Get your own show.
Agreed. We're going to move on. Area code 814-520. Well said, Christopher. 814-520.
Yeah, I'm right here. Hi, Kheri. Thank you for inviting me on Facebook to come on. I think the one thing that I wanted to mention real quick that I wanted to say while I was hearing all this about the protest is that protests serve a lot of different roles. The one big thing that I learned in my city when a young man who was accused of robbing 23 businesses was shot in a parking lot was that it released the pressure valve. And it actually kept our city kind of safer because as long as people had an outlet that they were able to release that frustration about what had happened to him, then it made even the police safer because then no one was running around trying to hunt them down because they had another way that was protected by the Constitution in order to make it so that they can voice their frustration with what had happened. I'll tell you that it worked on a small level because of the fact that, a lot of levels, but one of them was it took them 30 days to come up with a decision where if we wouldn't have been out there, me included, protesting them for doing this, and it was basically because of the Fifth Amendment right was stripped, which is one of the main reasons why I also went to Ferguson, is because Michael Brown's Fifth Amendment to due process was stripped from him when he was shot by Officer Wilson. Whether or not there was a struggle at the car, who the initiator was, is not the question here. It's whether or not when he had his hands up, why was he not arrested and let a jury make that decision on whether or not he'd actually assaulted the officer or what he did was wrong, whatever it may be. The jury would have never given him a sentence of execution by firing squad, ever. He would have never even gotten the death penalty for a struggle with a police officer or even the alleged strong-arm robbery. And I say alleged for a reason because of the fact that he never got his day in court. So to me, he's still innocent until proven guilty. And seeing as that can't happen because Officer Wilson took the law into his own hands, then to me he'll always be alleged. So the protests do a lot of different things. And the one lady that spoke, she was absolutely right. It brings attention nationwide to the situation. A lot of people know exactly what Ferguson is about and what had happened to Michael Brown, as well as, Azelle Ford and Eric Gardner. And all of that has now been brought to the spotlight. Dylan Taylor in Salt Lake City, Utah. All of that's been brought to the forefront. And so that does do that. But we have to think about all these tensions and how, in a community that's predominantly African-American, how upset it must be that they're constantly, Michael Brown was the last straw, they're constantly being oppressed in a lot of ways, being pulled over. There's an average of 3 warrants per household in Ferguson for fines, not for violent offenses, for fines because of being targeted as they're driving down the road and being pulled over and given a fine they cannot possibly pay. So that was the last straw, that all of a sudden out of nowhere, now you're going to kill somebody for walking in the middle of the street and he has his hands up. And who could blame him for that?
Killed. That's not why
that
he
is
was
exactly
killed.
why he was killed for walking in the middle of the street.
No, it isn't.
The officer could have just been
no
on
evidence
his way.
of that.
I am a grad student. Listen, I'll tell you this. There's absolutely evidence of that. I'm a grad student in criminology. I have a sociology degree. I am very, very educated. I do a lot of research.
Well,
I do probably more research than you do.
Of that.
I do. Eyewitness testimony that his hands were up in the air. But he didn't call to speak to you. See, I called to speak to Kheri.
Thank you.
Let her speak, please. I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish, caller.
So all I'm saying is that I understand with the protests. I think that they should absolutely be nonviolent. But when I was there on the front lines first day of curfew, I had bullets shot around my head. I'd seen a young man laying on the ground who'd been shot in the leg and in the stomach. And that night, someone was also shot in the throat. And I'm running, I lost my shoes. I'm running, hiding behind cars and LRAD being used on peaceful protesters. I was there on the front line, and that was crazy that our First Amendment, people exercising that and standing up for the loss of life, would have to, be confronted with that type of opposition.
So you were there the very first night of the protest?
A curfew. When they implemented the curfew, I believe it was on the morning of the 17th. It was a Sunday.
And so you were there when they were firing tear gas and rubber bullets at the protesters?
Yes, I was. I was right there. I mean, they were blowing around my head. I was ducking quite often.
Was it, now, for those of us who have not been there, and this is someone who has, were they unprovoked attacks, or were the protesters doing anything to cause the police to fire upon them?
The protesters were exercising their First Amendment. I am in the belief that the First Amendment does not have office hours, and that the curfew was unconstitutional. And there were people that just sat there, and what they were chanting was, no justice, there would be no curfew. People felt as though their rights were being infringed upon because this curfew was being put in place, because they were uncomfortable about the fact that people were protesting against their police department. And it was unprovoked. People were standing in the street. The only provocation that they had to do what they did was that at 12:01 there were still people out there protesting.
Wow. And so at 12:01, that's when the police began to fire upon the protesters.
They had the announcement go out, you are violating a statewide, curfew. If you do not disperse, and they gave their whole little spiel that they do over the loudspeaker. And then they started throwing the tear gas. The tear gas was going up. At first it was just gas, but then it ended up being tear gas, which a friend of mine who was with me, we went down there as street medics, actually, because of the fact that we know people were being hurt, and then there was no aid for them, and some could have been leery about going to the hospital for fear of some sort of issue because of the fact that they were at the protest. So we were down there to help render medical aid. And, to any protesters that have been shot by rubber bullets, those wounds are absolutely horrific. Or tear gas, things like that. So that's why we were there. And then they started, shooting the tear gas. My son ended up with pneumonia because we didn't know that if you're within 1,000 feet of tear gas, that you have to decontaminate your clothes by washing them like 3 times. It can actually make you very, very sick. Nobody tells you that.
Okay, stop.
Yes.
Stop. Okay, that's very important information that nobody's put out so far that I didn't even know that. Can you repeat that one more time? If you're shot with tear gas, what can happen?
my friend ended up getting pneumonia, and when he went to the doctor, he had said that because he was within 1,000 feet of tear gas and didn't decontaminate his clothes, because we're not from there. He was from Cincinnati. I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. He didn't wash his clothes because he didn't decontaminate his clothes. It caused him to get pneumonia. If you're within 1,000 feet of tear gas, you have to decontaminate your clothing and all of the items, around you, because it can make you sick.
Wow. That is excellent information, and we did not know that, caller. Or if anybody else knew it on the line, I had not heard that. And that is something that all the protesters that are going back on the front line, if Officer Darren Wilson isn't indicted, needs to know that you got to wash your clothes 3 times and decontaminate everything around you.
Yeah, anything that has been in that area, whether it be your clothing, you have to take a shower, wash your hair, because within 1,000 feet, it spreads. I mean, I saw it. It was just really weird how it happened, where it's just there and it's concentrated and then it starts going everywhere. The one thing that I've read, and some people that know about this have said that just because the weather is colder, it won't be as bad. Like, you can kind of be closer to the area than that and not be affected by the tear gas. But tear gas is a biological weapon. In Geneva Conventions, I believe it's been actually banned. So they're not telling you that when they put this out on you, that you can get very, very sick. It's not just your eyes burning and you're coughing, crazy because it's in your lungs. It can actually cause pneumonia and other issues. So you have to wash all of your clothing, your hair, anything that is with you should be decontaminated. So anything you take down there should be washable.
Mm-hmm. That is excellent information. 814. Stand by. We're going to pick up 708-822. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I saw on Twitter to come on this website. I was just wanted to speak a little bit about what that older fellow was saying about the younger generation, about how younger people, he sees them as getting pregnant or just single parents and all this stuff. I think that the younger generation is kind of at the forefront of this social media thing, which is how I even know about the Ferguson thing, and it's what has gotten me involved as much as I can be, being so far from the situation. And so I think the younger generation is more important than people are giving them credit for as far as issues like this go, because people do care. People are compassionate to what's going on down there for the right reasons. And the other guy that said that he had an opinion based on like 200 megabytes of information or whatever, that's not a lot of information to go off of. It's not enough to go off of, and you can have your opinion, but if it is an opinion based on not enough information, you have to know that in this day and age where you can be heard anywhere, or your information can be seen or heard anywhere, that you may be perpetuating the ignorance of somebody else who has that similar opinion with no information. And so I just think it's really important to keep in mind social media and Anonymous and all these people that aren't mainstream media that are bringing the truth out there in this day and age.
I agree. And let me, in this several white collars, I'm guessing, or I'm
this
saying
is correct.
Yeah. This is the thing.
Well, I'm not white. I'm a human being. I have a belly button like everybody else. I don't see color at all, so I don't want to be categorized as being white.
I don't think that there's such thing as colorblind. I think if you ignore color, that's a problem as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was about to make a point with that. My point was that this isn't about a black or white issue, that it's about, I agree, a human issue, and the fact that whether or not it was right or wrong what Officer Darren Wilson did to Mike Brown. And my question and my point that I was trying to make was, when you see the KKK coming in and trying to make this about race, how does that feel when you know that it's not about race? And you see that that's the race baiting and trying to cause people to be divided on this issue when it's really not about race at all. It's simply about right versus wrong. And if Darren Wilson had been a white person, I mean, if Mike Brown had been a white person and Darren Wilson had been a black officer, to me, my opinion on the subject would have been the same. that he shouldn't have died the way that he did, based on the fact of how the officer handled the situation. So when my point was to the white collars on the line is, how does it feel being a person that's European and seeing that it's being divided along race lines, and this could end up causing a divide among the races when it's not even about race.
Well, people have made it to be so. That's why.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, whether it should be or shouldn't be, many people have done exactly that. Exactly.
But the system has done that. The people have bought into it, but the system, the white supremacy, the established system,
no, ma'am. The racial industrial complex
into
has done
the fiber that was there before we did anything to buy into it. That's a part of the system.
That's not the right
system.
No.
You're absolutely right. It is the system that does it. And I'll tell you, it bothers me. It does bother me because I'll tell you, the media played a huge role in when I was going down there, because every picture they showed nothing but African Americans protesting. And I'm going, geez, I'm white. If I go down there, do you think like I'm going to be a target? Because that's all the media was showing. When I got down there, there were whites there. There were people from Tibet there. There were people from all over there standing in unity, not because Michael Brown was black and Darren Wilson was white, but because he was a human being. Yeah. And something terrible had happened to him. I had spoken to protesters down there. I'd done interviews with them. I've posted them. And it was really about the fact that this young man was on his way to college. He was not your typical, he was doing something in his family that made everybody proud, and his life was cut short because he didn't know how to solve a problem. That somebody with a gun wanted to feel more powerful that day and took his life away from him and squandered all of his potential, because he was black and not because Darren Wilson was white.
I don't know how you came to that conclusion. I don't know where the evidence you got comes to that conclusion, that he wanted to just take away somebody's life so he had a gun and he felt more powerful. Talk about elite. That is really elite, madam, even if it may be true. But I don't know what you're basing it on. Other than your very own. I was just accused of not being informed in my speculations because I had a 233 megabyte file, which, by the way, is one of the largest size for a book on an e-book download. That's one of the largest files you can find. That is the equivalent of a roughly 700-page book, but I'm told somehow that's not enough information upon which I can base a conclusion.
This is beyond
this lady
you
just
can have
said
your opinion,
that
and you base your opinion off of that. You base your opinion off of that, obviously, but I'm saying that's not a big enough source of information to have an educated opinion. It's just not enough.
It's not.
And I think for the caller who's talking above everybody else, I think you really, I don't know if you're just trying to agitate the conversation or what, but
no, this is what he thinks. This is how he feels. This is the problem.
But maybe that you're right. But I think the problem with his thinking is that he doesn't realize that when they get through getting rid of all the Mike Browns, they will come up the pecking order to you. And so
that's right.
I don't think you realize the situation needs to be rectified now before a Mike Brown of any other color gets killed. And so
Dylan Taylor was white, and he was shot by a black officer in Salt Lake City, Utah in August. He was a white man, and he was shot by a cop too. This isn't about being black or white. It's about cops being militarized and about negotiations being a full clip in your chest. That's what this is about. The rise of the warrior cop. That's what this is.
Well, that's definitely like part of what it's about. But I think the reason that it's such a race issue is because of the oppression of the black community, and this is just the last straw. And so there's that as well.
I want to say this. I think that anybody who have a chance to go to Ferguson should go down to Canfield Drive, especially the person with the 200 megabytes of information, because I'm going to tell you something. If you go down to Canfield Drive where Mike Brown was lynched, you will see how small that area is. It's a very small area. That street is small. The community is very tight-knit. And for that officer to shoot at Mike Brown like that many times, with that many people around, anybody could get hit by those bullets. And I want you to understand this, too. I want to give y'all a history lesson or give y'all homework to do. Research Bacon's Rebellion of 1676. That's Bacon's Rebellion of 1676. want to know why the system is the way it is, go back to that, and you see why America became America and why capitalism is capitalism. Bacon's rebellion happened in Jamestown, Virginia.
My son was just learning about Jamestown, Virginia, just recently, as far as Virginia and stuff like that. I mean, the tobacco plants, they had indentured servants first, and then they started bringing in a lot of African slaves in order to be able to work those cash crops. And there was actually more African-American slaves than there were actually white people that had slaves. But can you please spell what you had said, the first word?
Bacon, pork, Bacon's rebellion. And you actually alluded, like the stuff you just said is tied into that. And that's how the racism came about and the white supremacy. All that came out of the ruling class trying to protect their interests, like the 1%. Basically, the 1% created this system to protect their interests. And Bacon was a guy who was a part of the 1%, but he was kicked out the country club. And he became disgruntled.
I think he's spelling Bacon, B-A-C-O-N. Is that right?
Okay, Bacon. Okay, good. And he was killed. He was killed pretty quickly too. I mean, he didn't really get to spread his mission very long, right? Didn't they kill him because they were mad at him?
Yeah, but I also looked at that. What happened though? That's why we got America the way it is. That's why we got the police state and the ruling class, because of what happened in the Bacon's Rebellion of 1676. That's how this stuff came about in our system, our certain type of class system in America. So basically, we've been living a lie for 400 years about the truth about what America really is. It's a corporation.
And you know what, Ron, did you say that? I believe the gentleman who's basically making all these comments, I believe he's a retired police officer. If not a police officer. So the other issue is that if you're going to call and galvanize, what better person to keep the code of blue up than another police officer or a retired police officer? So you even have less credibility with the people. So you can talk all you want to, but the facts remain on the table. Last thing I'll say, you deal with provocateurs and instigators and agitators that are either paid in terms of favoritism or monetary, because when you look at the rebellion of Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey, it was the same reference, house Negroes, bootlicking, master-loving black men. They were not okay with a revolt that they didn't have to participate in. They didn't want it to happen. So they always was comfortable with the master being in the house, and they were always telling on the folks who had greater ambition. So we also need to be, like you said earlier, Kheri, those snakes that are there. So there's some weak-minded black men who also will come forward and sell out black folks.
Well, I notice very few arguments about the facts here. I hear lots of personal attacks, lots of vituperation, lots of remarks about Denmark Vesey and the slave rebellion and Nat Turner. But I hear very little about the facts that have to do with the Mike Brown case. Almost nothing. I'm about to give you some if you'll allow me to. But I suppose you won't. I don't think you want to hear them. I don't think you want to hear them. I don't think you care. I really don't.
I don't think he has them.
I do.
He just has a
I do. And if I get a chance, I will tell you. I will tell you what they are.
It should all be facts. You should be saying facts from the beginning.
I am trying to. Every time I get started, I get accused of talking over somebody.
You're arguing with everybody.
Just say them if you have them. Just say them.
All right. Well, if you allow me to, I'll start citing fact after fact after fact.
Give him an opportunity to say this. Because unanimously, it sounds like they want me to hang up on you. But I'm just
I think you will in just a moment because you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Looking up facts right now.
Everybody hold up and let him quote some of his facts.
All right. Once again, okay, on Mike Brown's, just above his right thumb, on the dorsal side of his right thumb, there's a graze wound from a gunshot. The wound was so close, it didn't even produce a pattern that is known in the forensic evidence business as stippling. Stippling on gunshot powder residue occurs when the shot is at close range but at least 1 inch away. The gunshot residue on the boy's thumb didn't even leave stippling. That's how close it was. Now, for it to be that close, it is not unreasonable to infer that he was reaching for Officer Wilson's gun. Now, that's just the first fact, but I really suspect You don't want to hear any facts.
That's not a fact. You inferred it.
That's from the autopsy report.
That's the autopsy report itself is a report.
That is a fact you knew. You don't want to hear that people know that.
When you're talking over each other, it just really sounds like static on the radio, y'all.
I apologize.
If y'all
really
want him
hard
to finish, let him make the point, and then we're like 10 minutes from getting out of here. So, caller, without all the yelling, can you just make the point?
Well, you know, aren't they?
Okay.
Facts. Yeah, we know about facts here.
Yeah, let's just infer.
I know that's a fact. We know
you know what Mike Brown was thinking. I mean, Officer Wilson, you just told us what he was thinking. He just wanted to kill a black man because he had a gun and he wanted to exercise power.
I never said that. I never said it was
well, that's what you implied, man.
No,
you said you knew.
That's not a fact, though.
Let him finish. Okay.
Wait, that's what she implied. I'm trying to come out with the facts from the autopsy report, which is the most, which is at this point the most reliable official record we have of what may, and again I say may have happened. Everything else is leaked, so we don't know. And I'm trying to get the facts out, and every time I try to relate a fact from the autopsy report, I get stopped.
You're screaming at everybody.
Well, yeah, because you notice how this works. Anybody who agrees with you gets the filibuster uninterrupted.
Well, I agree that he was shot at the car, and he was shot at the end of the car.
Okay, caller, let me ask you one question before you finish with what you're about to say. Of all the shows that I've done on police shootings, and I've done quite a few, you always find no problem with the police shooting, and you always find them justified. So it sounds like to me that you have a very biased viewpoint.
That's not true.
Let me finish. It seems like you have a very biased viewpoint, and no matter how many police officers kill young people in the street, you're going to find it justified.
Madam, I don't pretend to be objective. I am not. I will say it again. I am not objective. I was a police officer 28 years. I instructed use of force issues for much of my career to include when and how shootings are justified. I studied hundreds of police shootings, some of which were not justified, many of which resulted in our police officers going to jail for improper and or illegal and or criminal shootings of suspects. So believe me, I've run the gamut. I have run the gamut of studying this matter. So for you to say I don't know is simply incorrect. You don't know me. If you did, you would know better.
Wait. Let me just ask him one question. As a former police officer, how do you justify killing an unarmed teen?
Okay, very simply. First of all, sir, listen carefully what I'm about to say. This is crucial. This is crucial probably to the way Officer Wilson was trained, because as a firearms instructor, this is one of the first lessons I imparted to my students. If you study police officers who are killed in the line of duty, over 20% of them, let me say it again, over 20% of police officers who are killed in the line of duty are killed with their own firearm. And I tell the students, you never go to any incident involving a suspect that is unarmed because you bring the arm to the incident. There's never an unarmed incident with a police officer. He can always be killed with his own gun.
But
so for you to say that because someone is unarmed, there can never be a justification for a police officer shooting him is factually and logically incorrect.
No. But in this case, to justify the shooting, he would then have to justify that Mr. Brown was trying to take his weapon.
Sir, no, tain't necessarily so, but you keep positing these absolutes. Look, even I'm not positing an absolute. You people here seem to be positing absolutes that cannot be true.
I need to say something real quick. Is that not too long ago there was a shooting in an area where I was at. I'd heard the shots. I was in the car with a bunch of people, and we were just sitting there listening to music before I was dropping them off. There was gunshots in the area which I ducked to. all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I had cops around in my car with guns at me. I put my hands out the window and said, I have my hands up, don't shoot, because I know that they could think I have a weapon if I went for my inhaler, my phone, anything. And I ended up being arrested because my speech was a nuisance. I could have been shot, and you would have seen that as justified because he brought a firearm to a no-weapon fight. Nobody had any weapons. Nobody was being aggressive. We were just sitting in the car, but because we were in an area where there happened to be a shooting, which we had no knowledge of except for the gunshots, we were the target of their investigation with guns pointed at us. Listen, that was militarization at its finest. We did nothing. We were sitting there. And now I have to pay a court battle for that, but I could have been shot.
And the police officer on the phone won't validate any of the obvious or the other facts dealing with police misconduct and brutality. So
we got two more
calls to get to. In 5 minutes to get there, y'all. 2 more calls, 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to go to whoever this is with the block number 1111111. Good evening. You're on Center Stage. Good evening. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I had my phone muted. This is Nanny. And I wanted to bring into the conversation today Frank Taffy. I don't know if you remember, but he's a neighbor of George Zimmerman. And he had come out in support of Zimmerman. While he's testifying before the grand jury to see if civil charges should be brought up against George Zimmerman. Well, Mr. Taffy has lost 2 sons since the trial. And so now he states that he believes George Zimmerman did kill Trayvon because of the color of his skin. In addition to that, he has a daughter that's in the armed forces, and he lost his relationship with her. So I thought it was apropos for me to bring that up at this time to give an insight, I guess, into maybe karma.
Exactly.
So that's all I wanted to say. Good night, everyone.
I appreciate the caller. And karma does play a big role in this, y'all, because, you know, the universe corrects everything. So, you know, whether or not the grand jury does the right thing or not, they have their own karma that they're going to have to deal with, you know, for knowingly, you know, letting him walk. And also karma will correct Mr. Wilson as well. But, yeah, we're going to go back to the phone lines. We're going to pick up area code 585-820. Good evening. You're on Center Stage. 585-820. Last call. Area code 585-280. Okay. Closing your line. What I'd like to say, we're down to our last few minutes of the show. Thank you all for participating. We all await the decision from the grand jury, hoping that they do the right thing. As the lady just brought up, karma will correct this one way or another. Darren Wilson, I understand, is got a girlfriend, and they're expecting a baby. Good luck with that. You know, I pray that the baby comes here healthy, but I can only imagine the stress that young lady must be under with all of this. And it would have been made so much simpler from the very beginning if the Ferguson Police Department had done the right thing, and if the DA's office had done the right thing. You know, it's just so much unnecessary occurrences that have occurred since this has happened. There's no reason that the whole world should be tense waiting on, you know, a verdict on whether one man is going to be indicted on, you know, a situation like this. I mean, if anybody, you know, really wants to look at just the facts, that's all we have. Just look at the facts. Mike Brown shouldn't be dead today. You know, first of all, why do you stop a man and get into a violent altercation over jaywalking? I mean, we have we forgot? Has our memory so short that this was all about jaywalking? Officer Darren Wilson never had any knowledge of an alleged robbery, and I do say alleged because I question whether or not that even happened. So if that's the case, we're talking about a young man is dead. I mean, life over jaywalking. And then after you take this young man's life, we're looking at a grand jury that may not even find anything wrong with that. So time will only tell what the grand jury decision will be. To the protesters, I say, may God's angels hover and protect over you, because, you know, you are definitely going out into the deep. And, you know, this is, as Attorney Jerryl Christmas said earlier, this is totally uncharted water. You know, we pray for your safety. You know, we pray for Ferguson. We pray for the whole entire St. Louis area. But we know ultimately God is in control. You know, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask if there's anything that we can do. Please reach out to Center Stage. I'll definitely put it out in social media and on the show. If there's anything that we can do to help the protesters in their fight for justice for Mike Brown, we'll definitely do that. Listen, we got to get out of here tonight. Thank you all again for stopping by and chiming in on this subject. Hopefully justice will be served, but only time will tell on that. As far as Center Stage coming to Ferguson, we may do that very, very soon. We will announce that once we get safely to Ferguson, that we're on the ground. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.